You're listening to the Northamptonshire Carers Podcast.
Happy New Year and welcome to the January Northamptonshire Carers Podcast for 2024. Doesn't seem possible, does it really? Welcome along, and another great year of podcasts ahead. And in this episode, a conversation with Dr Emma Copsey, who's a community consultant cardiologist, and she'll be talking about heart health, the pumped up groups that she is a central part of here at Northamptonshire Carers, as well as having a bit of a conversation that really sort of tees us up for a future conversation with Emma about diet and the impact that can have not just on your heart health, but your health generally. As ever, if you would like to get in touch with us, put forward suggestions maybe for topics for conversation on future podcasts, whether that's matters of a more serious nature or light-hearted ones, then you can get in touch, podcast@northamptonshire-carers.org. Alternatively, give the office a call and ask to speak to Adam, Catherine or Paul. The number's 01933 677 907.
My job's been quite varied over recent years as my career path's taken a little bit of a more unusual turn. So I'm now actually employed by, I spent the last year working for Northampton General Hospital, but I'm now employed by NHFT in the community.
Oh, right, okay.
So I've spent 19 years in predominantly hospital medicine and now moved out into the community. So one of my key roles in how I've got to be involved with Northamptonshire Carers is by setting up and running with alongside Northamptonshire Carers pumped up groups, which are support groups for cardiac patients living with heart failure and people who have who've had heart attacks in the past. So we deliver these groups around the county now to support people with their heart conditions, and I provide education in the sessions, and I do one-to-one reviews for patients that need that. And we do education about the heart condition, but also about the sort of a more holistic approach. So that includes talking about things like nutrition and well-being, and this term called lifestyle medicine, which is looking at all the different key pillars of our health, which is really important for our well-being. So that's one of the biggest parts of my current role now, because we've got 5 groups around the county. We started just over 2 years ago now. So those groups take up quite a lot of my time. But an important part of my role now is also involved with virtual monitoring. So this is a newer thing that is growing and will be here to stay. So this involves monitoring patients in their own homes to try and pick up on any deteriorations before patients might otherwise be aware that things are changing. So with the intention of picking things up at an earlier stage, which may prevent people ending up going into hospital for an unplanned admission, but also may support them potentially coming out earlier. And in some conditions now, we're also having virtual wards, so patients are being managed at home like they might be at hospital, where they're monitored very closely. Have nurses coming in to do blood tests and change medication on a sort of day-to-day basis if necessary. And so virtual wards is an area that we will be moving more towards in increasing numbers of different healthcare conditions. So I do MDTs every week for patients on virtual monitoring. So patients that are at home that are submitting their day-to-day sort of observations with cardiac-related problems, and we then review their health records and we decide whether changes to their medication or investigations or other things need to be put into place.
And MDT is multidisciplinary. I'm going to sort of trip up on this. It was going so well. It's really interesting to hear about this idea of virtual wards, and as you said, that your role is very much sort of being out in the community, but it is interesting, that change, because I guess in the past it would have all been something that happened in a hospital setting, I guess, would it?
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's, we're a growing population, we're an ageing population, and the numbers of people coming into hospital, into the emergency departments, numbers are growing and growing, and the capacity to look after patients in hospital is not keeping up with the numbers of people that need to be looked after. So it makes sense to to move more care into the community where possible. And obviously there's always going to be people that need that hospital level care, but equally, if we can prevent some of those admissions by trying to pick up problems at an earlier stage, we can prevent that being necessary in the first place. But we can then also support some people that maybe are just in hospital because they need one particular medication through a drip, for example. But if we can start to deliver that at home, then all of the other bits can be delivered at home as well, in terms of the monitoring, whether that's blood tests or checking the observations several times a day. So we can create these virtual ward environments. And I think from a patient perspective, most patients would rather be at home. They don't want to be without their loved ones. They don't want to be in a strange environment where it's noisy throughout the day and the night and bright and so on. They want to be able to have a cup of tea when they want a cup of tea. They want to be able to have their own home cooked food, or their loved one with them. So I think from a patient point of view, it's much better. And one of the other problems we see when people are in hospital is they decondition, they become less physically active, they lose muscle mass, they lose confidence because they're in a bed for however many days or weeks sometimes, and so that can cause a big problem when people go home, particularly after a longer hospital admission.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that it could be that somebody might sort of be anxious or have some problems around mobility in some cases if they've been in hospital for quite a while. But it's interesting you're talking about being at home and in your own space and an environment that you know and feel comfortable in. That it must make a difference, I would imagine, in terms of people's well-being and mental health, being in their own space rather than feeling that they're having to go to a more specialised sort of setting, a hospital as regularly.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think there's a small number of people where if they're quite isolated, that they may feel some comfort and benefit from others being around them. But I think for the majority of people, they would rather be in their own home, and they have huge benefits from that, both physically in terms of maybe maintaining a bit of independence and confidence, but also emotionally and from a sort of mental well-being point of view. I think being in your home environment is where you would rather be.
And I suppose, and I know that there's debates about what normal means, but I guess it's actually more usual or more normal to be receiving support, whatever that may be, and us coming in or being part of the sort of concept of a virtual ward, but you being in your own home than having to be dodging backwards and forwards to the hospital, perhaps, which might have been the case for some people in the past.
Yeah.
I know you have a particular interest in heart failure, and that it's difficult really for it not to sound serious and dramatic. So I wonder if you'd tell us about that in terms of what heart failure might look like for somebody that's going through it, or indeed somebody that's supporting a friend, loved one that is going through that.
So heart failure is a very scary sounding name, condition, and for a lot of people it is. But there's such a range of severity and causes and prognosis. It is a very heterogeneous condition. There's a lot of variety in lots of different aspects. But overall, what we talk about when we talk about heart failure is the body is not able to meet its needs in terms of the heart function is disturbed in some way, and that leads to the body not being able to keep up with the demands, and that may present with symptoms like feeling very breathless. It may be that you're tired, fatigued. You may have problems with water retention and have swelling of the legs, for example. So those are some of the most common symptoms that people get. But it is the end result of some part of the heart not working properly, and for different people that will be different underlying reasons. So we see heart failure in children, we see heart failure in pregnancy, for example, in rare situations. But most commonly, it's the result of a heart attack. That's the most common underlying reason why people would experience heart failure in this country. But it can be the end result of valve problems, for example. It can be irregular heart rhythm or problems with the electrical problem of the heart. So any bits of the heart that don't work properly, ultimately, if prolonged, can can lead to damage of the heart whereby that heart isn't working properly. And in some cases that may be fully reversible, it may be partially reversible, or it may stay as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But medication and treatments have moved on a lot over time, and we are seeing more and more people now improving their symptoms and quality of life more than ever with newer treatments and devices and so on. So
Yeah. And that's good that you mentioned that, because I was going to go on to sort of say, well, if somebody is given that particular sort of diagnosis, then what are the possibilities for them? And I guess it does depend on the severity or what have you, but it sounds like there are clearly options.
Yeah, there'll be some core common problems. So people with heart failure will have some of the same key issues. So there's certain advice that we always give people living with heart failure in terms of things like weighing themselves every day so that they can see if there's any sudden rapid weight gain, which can be a sign of water retention. So simply having a pair of bathroom scales at home and stepping on the scales every day and just knowing what your weight is can be a really helpful way to keep an eye on whether you've got any water building up that otherwise you may not have noticed until it was much further on. So if you suddenly put on a couple of kilos over 2 or 3 days, that would be a sign to get some help and get some medical advice. But also, doing other things like measuring your blood pressure and things like that can also be really helpful. We see problems from very low blood pressure to high blood pressure in heart failure, again as part of that sort of diversity and spectrum. But yes, there's some core things that we would teach people about.
Yeah.
And that's what we teach about in our pumped up groups. But there's some very useful information available on the British Heart Foundation website, and another charity called Pumping Marvellous have lots of really useful free resources that you can download, get delivered in the post. There's all sorts of things online, videos, podcasts that you can listen to, read about. So there's lots of core education, but at a more individual level. Other treatments may depend on the type of heart failure you've got. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. There's lots of different options, different medication devices.
Yeah, it's tailored to the individual, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's just sort of jumping back to the pumped up groups for a moment. That's I guess one of the real sort of benefits of that. I'm sure there are many, but is to be it for people to, I guess, if they've got worries or just want to check something out, then I'm imagining that they can talk to you about those as part of it.
So this sort of group model is so valuable for patients in so many reasons. I mean, I think having other people with similar conditions there provides a lot of peer support, which is really, really useful. And compared to other models of cardiac rehabilitation, for example, where it tends to be for a fixed number of weeks and that's it, this is an ongoing sort of form of support. So people have the opportunity to really form good friendships with other people with a similar condition, and even other carers that are attending to support the individual with the heart condition. They meet other people that are also caring and have got similar anxieties and concerns. But there's that continuity as well. So I unless I'm on leave, I go to all of the sessions. So there's a bit of continuity for people there. If they've got certain queries and questions, we can talk things through.
That must make a real difference in terms of feeling comfortable and confident and knowing that it's the same person. And it's interesting what you're saying, Emma, about the peer support element of it, because I think that obviously here at Northamptonshire Carers, we frequently encounter people that maybe don't meet with other people that are carers, and kind of you imagine, it's not surprising really, that you're the only person that's going through this experience, and sometimes just to listen and be listened to by your peers is really helpful too.
I think just knowing that you're not alone, I think it's amazing how many people are sort of going through different things, and it's, if you're not in touch with other people, it's very easy to sort of think, well, am I alone in this? And you can feel very isolated. And I think through the pandemic and COVID, that's been even more so. People have been kept away from each other and from visiting in hospital. All sorts of different restrictions have meant that communication has been even harder and more challenging for people.
And sort of picking up on I suppose to some extent the experience of all of us through the pandemic, and certainly through 2020 and a bit of 2021 with the lockdowns and things, that I'm guessing that people coming along to a group and meeting with other people, just of itself, that social aspect is also probably quite beneficial, because I think that one of the things that maybe sort of was one of the positives of the lockdown, if we can think of anything that might have been positive, is that there was, for at least a while anyway, more of a focus on people's mental health and well-being, and the impact of not seeing people or talking to people or having face-to-face communication, really. So just thinking that probably does quite a lot of positive things in that sense.
Yeah, definitely.
I know that you've mentioned the importance of prevention and talked about lifestyle a bit. Now, I know that we're going to talk for a future podcast about diet, but I wondered if you could say a little bit briefly about the sort of the potential advantages of sort of looking more widely and looking at diet as part of something that could help you maybe in terms of going through sort of the autumn and winter and living better with a heart condition.
Yeah, well, certainly when New Year comes, I think at this time of year people are sort of looking towards Christmas, and maybe that's not the best time to be sort of trying to think about being more healthy. But certainly come New Year, there's a lot more motivation kicks in, and that's a great time for people to review maybe their sort of priorities for trying to improve their health and well-being. And certainly from a cardiac point of view, we know that nutrition is hugely important in our well-being. It's a massive contributor towards a lot of chronic health problems, risk factors for heart disease. So if you make dietary changes, there is significant opportunity to have a big impact on your overall health and well-being, but particularly from a cardiovascular point of view and your heart health. So we know, for example, that people that eat a vegetarian diet have about 25 to 30% lower risk of cardiovascular disease. So that's that's huge.
Quite significant, isn't it, to say the least? Yeah.
As part of the nutrition education that we do at Pumped Up, we really encourage and do education around trying to move more in the direction of a plant-based diet, because we know that there's significant health impacts on that for improving cardiovascular risk, for reducing the risk of diabetes, for example.
Yeah.
So I think if there's a few key things that people could think about in terms of reducing their risk of cardiovascular disease or improving the condition that they're already living with, whether that's chronic heart failure, you've had a previous heart attack, or you're diabetic, or various other chronic health conditions. Things like cutting out red meat, for example, or cutting out processed red meat. So we want to start at the very sort of one priority. Cutting out red meat is going to be hugely beneficial in terms of reducing risk. But I think also you can look at things that you're going to cut out. We know that things like eggs are also, high in cholesterol. And perhaps people don't realise how much cholesterol is in eggs. So if you're somebody that's eating them very frequently, reducing or potentially cutting out eggs could be potentially quite beneficial. And of course, there's no cholesterol in the plant world. So a plant-based diet is entirely cholesterol-free. But I think it's also important to be thinking about what healthful foods we can be adding in or increasing in our diet. So not just thinking about the less healthful foods that we want to cut out, but also the more healthful foods we want to be adding in. So we know there's additional health benefits for every additional portion of fruit and vegetables a day that we eat. So whilst we might think of the 5 a day, striving for more is better. And every additional portion you get into your diet will offer additional reduction in cardiovascular disease risk. And having that diversity and that rainbow of colours in your diet, and not sticking to the same kind of foods, which again a lot of people find hard. But it's trying to look for different things that you can do to improve your diet, and that diversity is an area that people struggle with.
And I think as well that this is, well, a good thing in one sense. It can have its disadvantages. Is that there's lots of things that obviously supermarkets and the like have kind of really recognised over the last few years that there are lots of people that want to follow a vegan or a plant-based diet, although it has introduced some processed. So you've got to be, it's like anything, I guess, you've got to be sort of mindful of what you're having, haven't you as well?
And I think, you know, at the end of the day, you have to remember that, you know, supermarkets, food manufacturers, they're there to make money.
Yeah.
They've got a business and they're there to try and make money. So they will market it very cleverly to be appealing. Yeah. So I think yes, moving in a more plant-based direction is good and has many benefits, not just for our own health, but obviously in a more wider scale, you know, from a planetary health point of view and from an animal point of view. There's lots of different benefits to that. I think from a sort of health level point of view, I think you do still have to be mindful that just because you're eating something that's plant-based doesn't automatically mean it is healthy or healthier. You can still have, you know, fried donuts and French fries and burgers and other things that are maybe not going to be the healthiest choice.
Yeah, sometimes they're okay, but you don't want to base your
well, I think any
base your diet around that.
Is likely to have additives like salt and things like that from a health, you know, heart point of view, you want to be mindful of as well. So there may be health benefits going for a meat-free alternative over the meat counterpart, but I think you still have to be mindful of, you know, how much processed food in total that you're eating. Yeah. And ultimately, you know, fresher home cooked food is always going to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's pretty easy to do some of it, really. You know, sort of 3 or 5 bean chili. Yeah. Very, very, very easy, quick, and
it doesn't have to be expensive either. I think sometimes people think that you know, some of these alternative diets or things like that can be quite expensive, but actually, you know, so can buying certain types of meats and things like that, particularly if you're buying better quality. But actually, yes, there's a big range of different products out there, and you'll get a big variety of price tags to go with that. Yeah. It is actually quite easy to do plant-based on a budget.
Is there anything else that you particularly sort of identify that may be helpful for somebody with a heart condition in terms of living well through the sort of months to come, through the autumn and the winter time?
I think there's lots of sort of general advice out there that you know, people sort of hear and then probably forget and things like that. But you know, simple things like, you know, having your annual seasonal flu, COVID vaccinations are recommended for people with heart conditions. Having vitamin D supplementation through the winter months is the Department of Health recommendation in this country between October and March, because we know that people don't, you know, in this country we just don't have enough daylight to make adequate vitamin D, and that's really important for our immunity, you know, as well as bone health and other things as well. I recommend to most of my patients actually that they look for a multivitamin that's got vitamin D in it. There may be benefits of some of the other vitamins. I know it's not maybe a national recommendation in terms of multivitamins and things like that. And again, it's not a regulated market. It's not like prescribing something, and there's a lot of variation out there. So you have to do a little bit of your own research. But I do see a huge number of different vitamin mineral deficiencies, you know, in clinical practice. It's very common to see lots of different deficiencies, and as people get older, your ability to absorb nutrients goes down, so you actually need more. You know, if you're going to need to have your vitamin D at this time of year, why buy it by itself? You might as well get the benefits for, you know, a small little difference in price to get, you know, the benefit of all the other vitamins and minerals as well, knowing that you've got enough of everything else too.
And I'm just wondering that I mean, obviously, if you're sort of looking at diet, if you're looking at maybe sort of supplements, vitamins and things, that is going to impact, hopefully in a positive sense, on your immune system, isn't it, really? And I'm particularly sort of conscious, having, as we did sort of mention COVID, that's because of having quite a period of time wearing masks, not seeing people, that it kind of feels, and I'm talking about my own experience of coming out of COVID, not any particular health issues, but coming down with colds and all of these things that you would probably have a bit more of a fighting chance to get over before, because you're exposed to people and I suppose exposed to germs, and I think that's perhaps had an impact as well, maybe.
Yeah, we had all the summer colds, didn't we? And people struggling with things at different times of the
Yeah.
year, more severe than normal, and that sort of thing. And our immune systems get out of practice when we're not exposed to things. So there is some benefit to having some of these things to get our immune systems in practice, if you like, to be better at sort of fighting those things when they do come along. But obviously, vaccinations have the benefit of doing that for us without us necessarily feeling unwell with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think when it comes to diet and things like that, we know that there's, in an ideal world, we wouldn't take supplements for many different things, but the reality is that it is hard to get a lot of those things from our diet, and there are certain vitamins and minerals as well that because of UK soil and things like that, we know that there's depleting levels of certain nutrients, and then we've got some vitamins that are water soluble and aren't stored in our body, so we need them on a day-to-day basis. So there's lots of different factors.
Just sort of going back to something that you were talking about earlier on, which was about sort of the prospect sometimes of improving. I think it was when we were talking about heart failure, that the prospect of improving things, treatment for that, possibly some degree of reversal. That I was just going to bring in a thought around something that Dr. Michael Mosley had talked about when he was doing stuff around the 5-2 or the fast diet. He noted that some long-term health issues or potential health issues that you might be on the cusp of, diabetes, he mentioned that in particular, which I think he said that he was sort of not far off from, or some words to that effect, that lifestyle and dietary changes, I guess, can potentially make a difference and change things for people sometimes. Would that be reasonable, or
Yeah, I mean, a lot of, I mean, we know that there's some, hereditary factors when it comes to things like diabetes, but we also know that there's a massive contributor from diet and lifestyle factors. So we know that things like, obesity, for example, are going to increase the risk of diabetes. But we also know that changing some lifestyle factors can also, we hear more and more now about certain people managing to reverse their diabetes. Obviously there's things like losing weight that will be helpful. But going back to sort of plant-based diet as well, we know that through different trials that have been done abroad and in the UK, that people that go towards a plant-based diet, a lot of them can significantly either reduce their medication requirements for their diabetes or reverse their diabetes such that they no longer are in that diabetic range. We know that diet can play a huge role in things like that.
It's a powerful tool, isn't it? Really, in a way.
In our pocket, we've got the ability to influence what we're eating and some of our lifestyle factors. It's not we're reliant on prescription from somebody else or other. These are things that are at our disposal to try and use and make the most of to improve our health.
I was just going to make a reference to a previous podcast with Dr. David Smart, who was a GP in Northampton for 30 years and is now involved with Action for Happiness, and he was talking about the gut biome and the importance of that. And I just sort of wondered, while we're sort of on the subject of teetering into sort of territory around sort of diet and vitamins and things that you can do potentially to help yourself, would you sort of see sort of looking at improving gut health as potentially being an advantage for somebody that was living with some heart issues?
We know in heart failure, for example, that a lot of people have very disturbed gut microbiome. So when we're talking about the gut microbiome, we're talking about all of the different microbes that are living in our gut, which makes up trillions of cells in our body and impacts hugely in terms of it has many different roles, and part of that is our immunity. But we know that in people with heart failure that they have very disturbed gut microbiomes, and we know that certain species of good bacteria can be low. We know that more harmful species of bacteria and other microbes can be particularly high. And there's certain levels of things that we can measure in people with heart failure that seem to indicate an adverse prognosis in heart failure. So we know that we don't really know the cause and effect yet. All we know that this is an observation that we're seeing very disturbed gut microbiome. So at this stage, we don't know whether changing those populations of bacteria and things in our gut, for example, is going to impact our prognosis or clinical course of heart failure, or whether this is just something that's going to happen because of the heart failure. But nonetheless, it's a huge area of interest, across lots of different areas of health, from depression to obviously gut health, to all sorts of different areas when we talk about the gut microbiome. So I think practically from a day-to-day point of view at the moment, I think there's a few different things that people can be doing to improve their gut health as well as their overall health. So we know that a lot of people in this country don't eat enough fibre. So recommended daily amount is 30 grams a day, but a lot of people aren't even managing 20. We tend to think of fibre as just being important for regular bowel habit, but of course it does far more than that. And we know that fibre is important for feeding our gut microbes. And that in turn can help reduce cholesterol. So going back to heart risk, all of these things start to link up. So increasing the fibre content in our diet, which again, fibre is in plant-based foods. So increasing the amount and the range of plant-based foods that you're eating will increase the amount of fibre in your diet, which will help with your gut microbiome. But there's also eating sort of probiotic type foods that you may have heard of. There's things like your Yakult drinks and plant-based alternative probiotics.
Fermented foods and things.
Yogurts. And also you've got other sort of fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut and all sorts. There's an increasing number of those sort of foods available out there now. So trying to again increase the range of foods that we're eating, as well as trying to include some kind of fermented foods every day in our diet, would be really helpful.
And they're actually really nice, some of those. I tried a plant-based sort of oat sort of, I think oat was one of the main, the replacement for the dairy, if I remember correctly. A yogurt that was really good, and drinks, I can't remember, there's not to mention a brand name, but there's a particular kind of drinks that you can get as sort of dairy and non-dairy that are for good sort of gut health, and they're good. Yep.
So I think increasing the amount of plant foods in your diet, having a bit of variety, and trying to get some sort of fermented foods into your diet, whether that's the cultured yogurts or trying something different, is really good for your health.
Great. And I'm thinking that I'm just going to mention exercise and moving around and stuff. I'm imagining something that is probably good for lots of things, but possibly for heart health too.
Absolutely. I mean, exercise is so fundamental for our health, in totality, really, and from our mental well-being to our physical health, to reducing all sorts of different chronic health problems. So keeping physically active is one of the most important things that we can do, again, to help prevent problems in the future, but also to help us stay strong and to reduce the risk of falls. And there's so many different health benefits associated with exercise. It's far more than just heart health, obviously, and I think that can become more of a challenge for some people at this time of year, who maybe like to go for a bit of a walk when the weather's fine, but when it starts to get cold, windy and dark, a lot of people may reduce the amount of physical exercise that they do if that's their main source of just getting out for that walk. So I think trying to be as active as possible as you can at home, but also be aware and think about other sort of forms of gentle exercise that you can do within your own home. In the pumped up classes, we do seated exercise. So, literally sitting on a chair. It's surprising, how many different groups of muscles, the rise in your heart rate you can get by doing some exercises just sitting on a chair or standing up holding a chair. And there's lots of different resources available online that could, you can look at for different ideas. So NHS website, if you search strength and training exercises, they've got lots of different sort of pictures and descriptions of simple exercises you can do at home. And of course, there's all sorts of different other sources available for people to look at. I know British Heart Foundation have got some videos for cardiac rehab on YouTube.
There are apps, I think, as well, plenty, aren't they?
There's lots of different things out there. I think really you just have to think about what it is you'd like to
Yeah.
try and do, and you'll find something.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Yeah.
seated exercise, whether it's strength training, or whether it's exercise that you can just do in your living room.
It's certainly not that you have to be going out, sort of in all your walking gear, going on a hike with a map covered over in case it rains or anything. It's actually doing something is actually better than doing
the term
anything.
Exercise can even put people off because they automatically think it's a higher level of workout or something that maybe they don't feel they have the energy or enthusiasm to do, or can't do with their heart condition, or a bit anxious.
Yeah.
I think actually just being physically active rather than being sedentary is important, and maybe for some people it's more helpful to think about it in that manner. So it could be, you're watching a program on TV, but rather than sitting on the sofa for half an hour, you could be stood up, and you could just be gently, sort of walking on the spot, or you could just be walking across the room, so you're getting a few sort of steps in, you're getting a heart rate, you're using your muscles, but you're not sort of sat down, just sort of just having that little bit of movement.
Can make a difference.
On a regular basis can make such a difference without even feeling like you're actually doing exercise.
Yeah.
I would say it is just maybe reframing for some people how you think about it.
And I'm always quite surprised if I decide that it is time to wash the car, for instance. I'm amazed at how many steps just walking around, and when I look on my watch and or my phone, and I think that's
and you'd never
quite a
think
lot
of
of
that
steps.
as exercise, but
No.
it's meaningful, helpful physical activity that will be helping your body stay
Yeah.
active and strong.
And I think that if you're doing something like washing the car and cleaning the inside of it or whatever, which I probably do need to do maybe soon again, you're bending, and you're doing, if you can, you're doing all of those things that
You're using different muscles to do different things.
Yes.
You're physically active, so you'll be getting your heart rate up a little bit, and
yeah.
I think just having a bit of variation again as well, not just doing one form of exercise or one form of physical activity. Doing a few different things. We'll be using different muscle groups, increasing your heart rate to different levels, using balance in different ways,
and just sort of using something that is from Action for Happiness of program is this idea of tiny steps or small steps, really, that if you do a bit, it's not, I think you're right, it's not seeing exercise as right, okay, I've got to go and sign up to a gym and do this. It's actually saying, I've walked into the town today, and that was doable, and I've got some exercise, and I've done 7,000 steps or whatever it is. That's a bit of a win, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah, I think it's just about setting realistic goals. So I think if you set unrealistic goals, then it's more likely to lead to failure, and then you don't feel so good about yourself afterwards. So I think it is trying to set realistic goals, set small little steps, and it might be very little goals, but I think if you can then achieve it, then you can build on that, and that will build confidence, and that will build a sort of more positive attitude and outlook to things. So
kind of motivates you to go on when you see the difference, doesn't it, really?
Absolutely. I think that's the important thing. I think we were talking about at our group yesterday how strength training exercises are important, and I mentioned the NHS website. You can get some really useful sort of tips of a couple of simple things that could be done at home, just a couple of minutes a day. But it all adds up, and it contributes to that. But after the age of about 30, we lose 10% of our muscle mass, 5% of our muscle mass, every 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's sort of additive. So it is a case of use it or lose it. So we want to try and maintain that muscle mass, and at any age you can build that back up if you do the right exercises. But if you don't use those muscles, the muscles will reduce in size and strength and so on, which then leads to its own problems later on.
And I think what you were saying is that's important. Is one of the things that's important is about being realistic and doing things that are achievable, because I think that otherwise we can all sometimes do this. You can get into the territory where after Christmas is probably a time when many of us decide this, that you kind of think, oh, actually I need to lose a stone, or I need to do this, and you're kind of enthusiastic and you set yourself this absolutely totally undoable sort of thing, that you're going to never have an alcoholic drink again, or you're going to do this, or you're going to do that, or maybe that's just me that does this. and you're going to fail because you've kind of you've put yourself forward for something that isn't doable. Whereas if you temper that a bit and think, well, actually, I could do this, or I could.
You have to think about what's important to you. What can you do? What do you want to get out of it?
Mm.
So it's important you're saying about the no alcohol. I don't drink alcohol, and I gave up alcohol a couple of years ago. And for health reasons, because I realised that some of the evidence in the past that I was taught at medical school about the health benefits of alcohol, things like red wine in particular, actually improved cardiovascular health. But actually, I think some of those older studies now have been questioned quite considerably, and perhaps the health benefits are nowhere near as significant as we thought. And actually, what we're now finding is that we know that alcohol, for example, is a risk factor for more than 15 types of cancer, and the World Research Fund say there's no safe amount. So when we're thinking about things, like alcohol or dietary things, you're not just thinking in terms of one single condition. We're a whole person, and we're still at risk of other things as well.
The whole range, isn't it?
It's making that overall decision. But for some people, they might feel that that's not achievable, and actually they want to cut down on the amount of alcohol they drink, and they're going to. I encourage some people, if they, drink nearly every day, for example, to have fixed days, fixed number of days, or fixed days in the week that are their alcohol-free days. So, but it's not an all or nothing. But for me, that was something I was very motivated to do when I sort of read all the research and I made that decision. And for me, it was easier to cut it out altogether than have it once a week and be tempted. So, but at an individual level, everyone's different, and you've got to appreciate perhaps what you can achieve, what you want to achieve, and go from there.
And I think there's actually quite a lot of good, maybe which wasn't always the case in the past, totally alcohol-free drinks, beers, lagers, and others that you can have if you want to, and which are also lower calorie. So if that's a stepping stone to reducing or cutting out, then that's a possibility, isn't it?
One thing that I think surprised me when I started looking into it a bit more is just how much sugar there is in alcohol, for example. And again, sugar is also going to link back to diabetes, sort of weight gain, other issues as well. So even just switching to like an alcohol-free wine, for example, may typically, reduce the sugar content by nearly half, which is significant. Yeah. But I've also started enjoying, again, different drinks that perhaps I, didn't know about a number of years ago, things like kombucha, which again is a sparkling fermented green tea drink. So that's got some health benefits associated with it. And now I'll enjoy that as a sort of, more treat type drink at a weekend, but it's got beneficial effects without so much sugar and so on. So
thanks so much for having such a wide-ranging conversation with us for this episode of the podcast. I know that we're going to do another one that is going to pick up on some of the things that we've sort of teetered around or touched on a bit around sort of diet and plant-based eating. So I really, really appreciate you coming in and taking the time to talk to us.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Much appreciation to Dr. Emma Copsey for that interesting and wide-ranging conversation for this month's podcast. And we'll be back in February with another episode. I haven't quite decided what that's going to be yet, so it's a surprise. But I will leave you with the words of Benny, Bjorn, Frida and Anietta. Happy New Year.
This podcast is created by Northamptonshire Carers and is a Man with a Beard production.